Welcome to the Uncanny Valley podcast. We're the place where we explore, those fascinating intersections of history, human psychology, and really imaginative design.
And today, we are plunging headfirst into a world that's, well, it's rich, it's dark, it's where history really slams into horror.
Yeah, giving those really profound human experiences this terrifying but honestly utterly compelling twist.
We're going to be exploring Memento Mori, which is this really unique role-playing game. It uses the grim backdrop of 14th century Europe during the Black Death.
Right.
And it uses that as a stage for a genuinely unsettling supernatural transformation. It's not just about like rolling dice or game mechanics.
Not at all.
It's about this meticulously crafted world. It
Yeah.
really challenges how we perceive humanity, power, even destiny itself.
So our mission today is really to unpack the core concepts of Memento Mori. We want to get into its brutal historical grounding, but also its deeply unsettling supernatural side and that whole player-driven narrative thing.
Yeah, we'll try and extract the most compelling bits, those nuggets of knowledge and insight. Hopefully help you understand what makes this world just so immersive and, frankly, thought-provoking.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to really appreciating the kind of dark genius behind this narrative world.
And whether you're someone drawn to alternative history, or maybe the psychology of fear, or just the raw art of immersive storytelling, I think this exploration is going to offer some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments.
Definitely. It's a chance to see how a game, a tabletop game, can distill these complex, often disturbing themes into something deeply personal, unforgettable even.
And why it really stands out, I think, in the landscape of role-playing games today.
Okay, so to really get Memento Mori, we absolutely have to start with the setting. 14th century Europe. This isn't just like wallpaper history, is it?
No, not at all. It's practically a character in itself.
Yeah.
It's drenched in despair, and it's just primed for this horrifying supernatural layer to be painted over it. The historical reality is completely foundational. You have to grasp it to understand the game's oppressive atmosphere. So imagine late Middle Ages Europe. It's a continent already sort of teetering on the brink of profound crisis, even before the plague showed up.
Right. Things were already bad.
Exactly. Around the year 1300, you see this significant, sustained drop in average global temperature. And it wasn't just a little chilly.
No.
This kicked off a series of absolutely devastating famines.
And these weren't just like local bad harvests, were they? We're talking huge scale.
Huge scale. Think about the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317. It wasn't confined to one area. It rippled across the entire continent. Food prices didn't just nudge up. They went through the roof.
Pushing people who were already struggling right to the edge.
Completely. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the landed gentry, the nobles, feeling the economic pinch themselves, they increased what they called vexations.
Vexations. Sounds unpleasant.
It was. Basically burdens and taxes on their tenants. It just drove people deeper and deeper into desperation.
So you've got this widespread societal collapse brewing, particularly in the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. Agrarian areas became significantly depopulated. People were already malnourished, often living just on cereals, and they were forced to migrate en masse to the cities.
Looking for anything, right? Charities, scraps.
Anything they could find, often relying on charity institutions that were just completely overwhelmed. And this huge demographic shift, it had massive implications beyond just hunger. States, kingdoms that traditionally relied on permanent militias or feudal knights,
Yeah.
they found they couldn't sustain them anymore. So instead, they started turning to paid fighters, mercenaries, essentially, a resource that was growing in a society defined by this constant flux and desperation.
Wow. Okay, so society is incredibly fragile. The foundations are cracking under famine, social upheaval, and then...
And then, as if the world needed one final crushing blow, the plague arrives. The Black Death.
This wasn't just another problem. This was...
It was unprecedented, a catastrophe that really sealed the deal on that apocalyptic atmosphere. The sheer scale of it is almost impossible for us to truly comprehend now.
I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
This single epidemic claimed 1/3 of the entire European population.
1 in 3 people. Gone.
Gone. Contemporary texts from the time, they're chillingly vivid. They describe this atmosphere of utter apocalypse. Innumerable victims just dumped into mass graves, or sometimes, less commonly, burned on huge pyres.
It must have felt like the end of the world.
To those living through it, it genuinely felt as though the doors of hell had opened onto their world, a horrifying sign that maybe humanity was just doomed.
And looking back, what makes it even more grim is just how utterly unprepared they were, their understanding.
Oh, completely ill-equipped. Medical knowledge was incredibly primitive by our standards. There was zero understanding of how epidemics actually worked. No concept of contagion as we know it.
So what did they do? Doctors, scholars?
They were desperate for answers. So they often resorted to folk remedies, superstitions, even, arcane practices, anything they thought might work.
And that ignorance, it led to blame, didn't it?
Tragically, yes. It fueled rampant scapegoating. People needed someone to blame for this unfathomable list of disasters raining down on them.
And the targets were predictable, sadly.
Yeah. The finger pointing quickly and cruelly turned towards those already marginalized, already misunderstood. Jewish communities, Roma people, women accused of being witches.
It became a hunt.
An all-out hunt, the source calls it, leading to immense suffering, persecution for countless innocent people all across Europe.
So in this specific, horrifying historical context, death itself, it becomes like the main character on stage.
Almost a tangible figure, yeah. During those peak years, 1347 to 1350, it metaphorically donned the executioner's hood. And it didn't discriminate. It demolished social structures, wiped out entire estates, rendered titles meaningless.
King or pauper, it didn't matter.
When facing death and its unrelenting acts, everyone was truly, absolutely equal. And that raw, brutal, terrifying canvas, that's precisely what Memento Mori paints its stories on.
Okay, so that's the horrifying reality. But what makes Memento Mori twist this historical nightmare into something, well, uniquely uncanny is this introduction of a hidden, corrupted reality right alongside ours, beyond the veil.
Right. And the striking thing about Beyond the Veil is it's not some distant planet or another dimension off somewhere else.
No.
The game explicitly describes it as completely superimposed on our own world, like a shroud.
Yeah.
It's a parallel realm, but it's entirely sealed off from what ordinary people can perceive.
And ordinary people are called unawares.
Unawares, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they simply lack the supernatural talent, the perception to see through this illusory metaphysical barrier. They're just unaware.
So while we're, going about our daily lives completely oblivious, there are these invisible CMs, places where the two realities touch.
Exactly. The game explains these crossings between realities exist everywhere, but they're unrecognizable to us, the unawares. For example, an ancient forgotten door nobody's opened in centuries, an abandoned well out in a field, even just a gnarled hole in a dead tree. Any of those could potentially serve as a gate.
A gate between worlds.
Okay.
And the drifters, the main characters, they can perceive these.
Right. This is crucial. Unlike unawares, drifters are acutely aware of nearby gates. They can feel the dark powers sort of radiating from these crossings. They witness unsettling phenomena around them that remain completely invisible to everyone else.
And things use these gates.
Oh, yeah. Supernatural creatures often profit from these stable connections, sometimes even demanding a grim fee or a sacrifice for passage between the worlds.
Okay, so imagine stepping through one of these gates. What hits you? What does it look like beyond the veil?
The sources paint a really vivid picture. It's a world shrouded in a heavy layer of smoke. It's perpetually dark, foggy, covered in ash and crumbling rubble. It's like all those gory folktales, those childhood nightmares about twisted paths, rocky deserts, grim forests, rank, festering bodies of water.
They're real there.
They've materialized, and the description emphasizes it's far worse than usually imagined.
Worse than nightmares. Great.
What's really unsettling is this concept of twisted reflections. The game gives this example, where you might have a lush, beautiful garden in our known world.
Yeah.
Beyond the veil, in that exact spot, you'd find a rocky desert populated by these horrible reptiles that only lay eggs in the freshly killed corpses of large mammals.
Okay, so it's a dark, lethal shadow of our world,
Yeah.
a perverse mirror image.
That's a good way to put it. And generally, drifters avoid the deeper layers of this realm. Venturing too far, apparently, leads to a complete loss of sanity. You transform into what are called incompletes.
Incomplete.
Some of the most dangerous supernatural creatures in the entire setting. Essentially, going too deep is a one-way path to damnation.
Okay, so twisted reflections, one-way paths to damnation. Does Beyond the Veil have specific landmarks or features beyond just the general horror?
It does. Two really chilling types are mentioned. Ancient ruins and something called hecatomb fields.
Ancient ruins,
Yeah.
like older than the medieval setting.
Much older, it seems. One of the really profound implications here is that Beyond the Veil, Drifters can stumble upon the ruins of completely unknown, fallen civilizations.
Not human ones.
Doesn't sound like it. We're talking unfamiliar architectures, abandoned temples with huge statues of forgotten gods, intricate mazes hidden inside mounds, even castles built from impossible alien seating materials. These structures clearly predate the Middle Ages. It suggests this vast, dark, utterly alien history for this shadow realm. Hints of horrors that existed long before the current despair.
That adds a whole other layer of cosmic dread. And then Hecatomb Fields. That sounds ominous.
It is. The source material describes these as places where bloody events led to mass deaths. So many deaths, or such horrific deaths, that the veil itself thinned out, or even shrank in that location.
So the barrier is weaker there.
Or non-existent. These are true locus horridus horrific sites. Think ghost villages where everyone was massacred, clearings where unspeakable human sacrifices took place, or just the grim, overflowing mass graves behind plague hospitals. The veil permeates these locations so thoroughly that the two realities become almost indistinguishable in these small, cursed areas.
And what happens in these places? What makes them so bad?
A key aspect is the spirits of the dead. In Hecatomb Fields, the spirits of those who died there are trapped. They're stuck in the mortal world, and they are always visible to drifters.
What do they look like?
Often they appear as trembling shadows or foggy shapes, maybe wisps of light. The more relevance the living give to these places, remembering the tragedy, fearing it, the more defined these ghosts become, and drifters can often speak to them.
Are they helpful or dangerous?
They're tormented, driven by their lingering pain, maybe a thirst for vengeance, or just unfinished business from their lives. They're not necessarily benevolent. They often seek help to reach an afterlife that is, for them, a complete unknown.
Wow. Trapped souls in bleeding reality. Okay, and if that wasn't enough, there are even worse places. The antechamber and the nightmare realm.
Yeah, these sound like the ultimate terrifying destinations.
Yeah.
The antechamber is described as a place of pure madness. It exists neither truly in the unaware world nor fully beyond the veil. It's sort of in between.
How does it happen?
It's a terrifying phenomenon summoned by reckless drifter magic. When it happens, the drifter and anyone nearby, allies, enemies, doesn't matter, are instantly catapulted into this small, unstable, dreamlike realm.
And how do you get out?
To escape, the inhabitants have to solve an enigma, a riddle, or puzzle that's tied directly to whatever looms darkest in the host drifter's mind. Their trauma, their fear, their deepest anxiety.
So it's like a personalized psychological horror pocket dimension.
That's exactly what it sounds like. It's the game's brilliant way of turning psychological horror into a literal, playable challenge, forcing drifters to confront their inner demons in a very real, tangible, and dangerous way.
Intense. Okay. And then the nightmare realm. That sounds final.
It's presented as a legendary dimension, a world beyond all worlds. It's known only to the most powerful creatures, like the princes from beyond the veil, and maybe some ancient mystics.
What's it like?
That's the compelling part. There's no single definitive description. It's called the Valhalla of corruption, endless torment, all-consuming darkness. The game literally states that any description of the nightmare could be right because, and this is a direct quote, the nightmare is everything. Everything the unaware have ever been afraid of, mixed with everything creatures from beyond the veil have ever wished for.
So, ultimate fear and ultimate corrupt desire all rolled into one dimension.
Pretty much. The ultimate horror.
Truly a grim canvas Memento Mori paints. Which brings us, I think, to the heart of it all. The human element. The drifters themselves. These aren't your typical heroes, are they?
Not even close. They're humanity right on the brink, caught irrevocably between these two worlds.
And their origin is tied directly to the plague itself.
That's a core insight here, yeah. While countless people just died from the Black Death, a rare few noticed something distinct as their illness progressed. These strange spots appearing on their bodies, known as the curse's mark.
The mark.
And it's this mark and this brutal twist of fate that paradoxically opens their minds to the terrifying parallel reality of beyond the veil.
So the very thing killing them is also giving them this horrifying new perception and eventually power. That's quite the irony.
Profound and disturbing, yeah.
And what does this transformation mean for their journey? Is it heroic in any traditional sense? Awakening?
Not in the slightest. There's no classical hero's journey here. Drifters are fundamentally forced to abandon their everyday lives. They're thrown into this unknown supernatural world, confronting these overbearing forces, having their deepest convictions challenged to the core.
And they're guided by something. An omen. A dream.
Their path is driven by a mysterious omen, a kind of prophecy, and their deeply personal dream. The dream is this powerful, often seemingly impossible ambition or goal. But unlike traditional heroes, drifters are consumed by the plague's corruption as their powers grow.
So there's no winning, really.
They know there's no happily ever after, only eternal rest. Their only hope, their entire defining purpose, becomes fulfilling that dream before their inevitable death and decay takes them completely.
That's stark, almost nihilistic. So despite this grim fate, this preordained doom, are they actually a threat to the creatures of the Vale? Or are they just pawns in a bigger game?
Oh, they can be incredibly dangerous. Despite their tragic path, drifters can be very dangerous for the creatures beyond the Veil, especially when they work together. The source even states some drifters might stand a chance of challenging the princes themselves.
The princes, those super powerful ancient entities.
The very same.
Yeah.
So even in their decay, even facing their own impending doom, they possess this immense destructive potential against the forces of darkness.
And how does this transformation, this lifting of the veil as they start to perceive things, how does it look to the people around them, the unawares? It can't be easy to hide.
No, you're right. It's a profound shift, and it starts subtly. As a drifter's physical health declines from the plague, something else awakens on a deeper level. They become tormented by their dream, seeing its fulfillment as imminent, believing all the signs are pointing towards it becoming real.
How do they react to that?
It varies. Some embrace their new supernatural nature, maybe finding a grim satisfaction in it. Others desperately cling to their fading humanity, fighting the change.
And this internal struggle, it must leak out. People must notice.
Absolutely. It has very visible external repercussions in their community. Relatives get worried. Neighbors become increasingly suspicious. Parish priests hear troubling rumors about their mood swings during confession, maybe.
And in the Middle Ages, being different was dangerous.
Extremely. Any eccentricity, any perceived excessive freedom was immediately seen as a sign of the devil. It made deviants, even potentially well-intentioned ones, objects of profound suspicion, often persecution.
Can they hide it at first?
Maybe the early stages of the disease if you're careful.
Yeah.
But soon their appearance starts to hint at something grim. The madness starts slowly digging into them, chipping away at their humanity. And here's where it gets really unsettling. When the mark, that specific prophecy tattooed on their skin, first appears, everyone around them feels that there is something wrong about them. It's not specific, it's just this indescribable shift, a pervasive sense of dread. Animals get restless near them, children cry, even their own parents might feel this indescribable weight in their chest when they're close.
Like a psychic wrongness they radiate.
Exactly. It's a widespread, inexplicable feeling that just cannot be ignored.
Chilling. Okay, that visible transformation brings us to the anatomy of a drifter. The game clearly has a very detailed character foundation, tying these story elements right into the mechanics.
Right. Each drifter is defined by these core attributes that don't just tell a story, they directly impact how you play the game. First up, there's their name, or nomen omen, as the game calls it.
Nomen omen. Name is destiny.
Pretty much. It's more than just their given name. It's a nickname or an epithet, like Annie Fleeting Shadow, or Cold Hands Greg, or Mary the Holy. It encapsulates some specific aspect or characteristic feature, good or bad. And mechanically, it grants advantages in certain situations. It has 2 associated slots, which are these fundamental markers of a character's abilities and potential.
Okay, so it's about how they're known, what defines them, even as they change. Then, their dream.
The dream is really the beating heart of a drifter. It's their main goal, often something impossible, that they aspire to reach before the end comes. It's not just ambition, it's described as a vacation, a deep personal calling that overrides everything else.
Like what? What kind of dreams?
Could be anything, really. A pauper yearning for a royal crown, an alchemist obsessed with turning base iron into gold, someone desperate for true love in this bleak world, a disgraced general needing to regain lost honor.
Big driving forces.
Huge. And what's profoundly significant here is that the princes from beyond the veil, those ancient powerful entities, they fear and envy the drifters' dreams the most. They see them as this force of will, of hope maybe, that's beyond their comprehension and control.
Wow. So their deepest desires are both their engine and something otherworldly beings fear. Okay, what about the physical sign, the mark?
Right, the mark. It's described as a prophecy tattooed on a drifter's skin. It subtly hints at the horror they will become.
So it predicts their fate.
Not specific events, necessarily. It's more about encapsulating keywords that guide the character's evolution as the corruption spreads. For instance, a Mark of the Dawn might hint at keywords like regenerating or radiant. A mark of the ferryman could suggest salvific or necromantic. A mark of the reaper might imply sacrificial or relentless.
So it gives clues about the type of monster they might become.
Exactly. It offers inspiration, a thematic guide for how their physical and supernatural transformation might unfold over the course of the game. Their destiny literally etched onto their skin.
Okay, moving on to how they actually interact with the world. Organs. That's an unusual term for attributes.
It is, but it fits the theme.
Yeah.
Organs represent a drifter's fundamental physical, mental, and moral abilities. But maybe more importantly, they define the personality of the character and how they approach obstacles. There are 4 distinct organs.
Let's hear them.
First is nerve. That's instinct, basic impulses, quickness, intuition, your gut reaction.
Okay.
Then cerebrum. Logical reasoning, knowledge, long-term planning, cynical rationality, the calculating mind.
Makes sense.
Third is heart. Feelings, the ability to unite people, sincerity, the drive to protect loved ones, the emotional core.
Right.
And finally, viscera. This is used when actions go against your conscience. When a drifter uses others' suffering or commits atrocities, it's their capacity for cruelty, for darkness.
Viscera.
That's visceral. And these have slots, too. Yeah, each organ has between 1 and 3 slots, with the first one always available. When a drifter performs an action, the player chooses which organ best fits their approach. So it's a narrative choice as much as a mechanical one. How are we doing this?
I like that. It forces you to think about character, and underpinning all of this, their physical state is blood.
Right. Blood represents the drifter's mental and physical conditions. And crucially, it's what regulates corruption, which we absolutely need to talk more about soon.
Okay.
It always has 3 slots, and significantly, one of those always starts as corrupted, reflecting the plague's initial grip. Blood slots are included in the base dice pool for every roll you make.
Every single roll.
Every single roll. So it's this foundational attribute that constantly mechanically reminds players of their character's encroaching decay.
No escaping it. What about their past? Their connections? In a world this bleak, those must be important anchors.
They are, and they're represented by bonds. These are memories, loved ones, distant moments of peace, maybe even symbolic objects that bring back pure feelings of great power.
Like talismans of hope.
Exactly. Each bond has a subject, like my trusty needle or my wife Anna, and it has a key phrase that captures its essence, like there's nothing I can't mend or the value of a caress. These are reservoirs of hope, of humanity, that drifters can call upon in dire moments, though even they aren't immune to the corruption.
Ominous. Okay. And their skills. Things they learned or are good at.
Those are their virtues. There's basically a portfolio of specialized fields, often professions or maybe archetypal cliches. They represent talents, learned or innate.
Examples.
Think swordswoman, merchant, flatterer, healer, scholar, assassin, things like that. Each drifter gets 3 virtues, each with 1 slot. They can add a die to a roll when that skill is relevant, reflecting their practical abilities in this grim world.
And finally, starting equipment. Is it important?
Mechanically, not very. It's determined by the drifter's backstory and skills, but the rules emphasize it's of minimal importance compared to the supernatural powers they gain. The game deliberately focuses on the character's internal, intrinsic, corrupted abilities rather than what they're carrying. It emphasizes that internal, transformative journey.
So the very essence of a drifter name, dreams, decay, personality, hope, skills, it's all intricately woven into how they face their grim destiny. Which brings us right to the core mechanic, the main theme, corruption.
Yeah, you can't talk about Memento Mori without talking about corruption. It's not just a penalty or a status effect. It's the central driving force of the game. It's inextricably linked to the drifter's growing powers. The game is very explicit. Corruption and plague, power and illness, darkness and deterioration are all inseparable pairs.
So gaining power literally means losing yourself, losing your humanity.
That's the devastating trade-off at its core. As drifters gain power, their bodies decay. Their breath gets shorter. Their memories cloud over. Their destiny becomes ever more grim. Corruption is how those malevolent forces from beyond the veil manifest as these extraordinary, often terrifying powers called gifts.
Gifts. Okay. So how does this trade-off work mechanically? You mentioned slots before, and dice.
Right. This is where those slots on your character sheet become absolutely crucial. When a drifter's corruption grows either through failing rolls badly, using certain powers, or narrative events, the player has to physically blacken 1 or more slots.
You actually color them in.
Yeah. And this has a direct, visible impact on the game's economy, especially dice rolls. Non-corrupted slots, the white ones, grant you standard white six-sided dice d6s, but corrupted slots, the blackened ones, grant you black d6s.
And that difference matters. White dice versus black dice.
It's vital, because black dice have unique, dangerous outcomes that constantly highlight the steep price of their power.
Okay, what are these unique outcomes? I think you mentioned dark successes and dark failures.
Exactly. When you roll a 6 on a black die, that's a dark success.
Yeah.
It's incredibly potent. It counts as 3 normal successes towards your goal.
3. That's huge.
It is. But there's a steep, immediate price. The player must, right then and there, blacken one of their blood slots, showing the corruption accelerating.
Wow. Okay. And dark failures.
Conversely, if you roll a 1 on a black die, that's a dark failure. It actively erases 1. Success gained from any other die in that same roll, white or black.
So it cancels out your successes. Nasty. Can you maybe walk us through a quick example just to really nail that down?
Sure, yeah. Let's say a drifter, maybe moderately corrupted, needs to make a really risky roll. They gather their dice pool, maybe 6 dice in total. And let's say because of their corrupted organs or blood, 3 of those dice are black.
Okay. 3 white, 3 black.
Right. They roll, let's say they get a 5 and a 6 on the white dice. That's 2 successes so far.
Yep.
On the black dice they roll, let's say a 6, a 4, and a 1.
Okay, so a dark success and a dark failure.
Exactly. So the 4 on the black die counts as 1 success. The 6 on the black die is a dark success, so that adds 3 more successes. But the 1 on the black die is a dark failure, so that subtracts 1 success.
So let's tally that. 2 from white, 1 from the black 4, plus 3 from the black 6, minus 1 from the black 1. That's 5 successes.
5 successes, yeah. A powerful outcome. Much better than if they'd only had white dice. But because they rolled that dark success, the 6 on the black die, they immediately have to blacken one of their blood slots.
Ah, the price.
The price. Further accelerating their decay, bringing them closer to the end. So you see, the power comes at a very real, very swift cost. It literally furthers your character's disintegration every time you tap into it successfully.
That is an incredibly clever and thematic way to handle power scaling. It's not a clean gain. Okay, and these gifts, you mentioned the supernatural blessings from sacrifice. How do they actually manifest? What do they cost?
Gifts are described as the supernatural powers that blossom. As drifters, willingly or unwillingly, sacrifice a part of themselves to corruption. The game calls it a transformation into quasi-divine beings, which just further separates them from their former humanity.
And they're tied to specific characteristics.
Yeah, there are 3 types. Each drifter eventually gets a gift of the name, a gift of the bonds, and a gift of the virtues. Each type is triggered when the very first slot of that specific characteristic gets corrupted, gets blackened. And as more slots of that type get corrupted, the gift can evolve, becoming more powerful, and usually more monstrous.
So the loss of an aspect of yourself literally unlocks these dark powers. Let's start with the name, corrupting your name. That sounds like a profound loss of identity.
It absolutely is. When the first name slot is corrupted, the drifter loses their old epithet, the nickname that defined them, and they gain a new, darker one. For example, someone known as Brittle the Outcast might first lose the outcast part, just becoming brittle. Then as the gift manifests, they gain a new, dark title, like Brittle the Black Pariah.
The Black Pariah.
Okay.
And this new epithet becomes their defining feature. But here's where it gets truly unsettling for their identity. If the second and last name slot also turns black,
Yeah.
the drifter's original first name, Brettle in this case, is completely erased from their memory. They forget it, and they are known only by their dark epithet, only as the Black Pariah.
They forget their own name. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
A complete erasure of who they were. Do other people remember them, their family?
According to the source, no. All the unawares who knew them completely forget their past identity. Even their closest family might forget they ever existed. It's like they're retroactively erased from mundane reality.
Whoa.
Only other drifters traveling with them might briefly remember their original name. And if they try to remind them, it might open these brief, painful flashes of their lost past. But conversely,
Yeah.
creatures from beyond the veil, they find the drifter easier to recognize now. It's like they've gained this notorious reputation in the other world. They respect or fear this new dark identity. It's a new monstrous self forged in decay. Chilling. Okay, what about virtues and bonds? How does their corruption manifest as gifts? What's the cost there?
With virtues, when a virtue slot is corrupted, it's not just a mechanical loss of a die. It's completely erased from the character sheet, and all the associated memories and personal features tied to that virtue are forever gone.
Yawn. Like, completely.
Completely. The example given is a drifter who is a soldier. When that virtue gets corrupted, they might forget all their past battles, their training, their comrades, their armor might even physically vanish from them.
Yeah.
It truly reflects the price paid for power. A piece of who you were simply ceases to exist.
Wow. And bonds. Losing those connections must be devastating.
It is. When the first bond slot is corrupted, the player gains a gift of the bonds. Initially, the bond itself can still be used, but it's weakened. It only grants a single white D6, like a faint echo of its former strength.
Now, when the second slot goes.
Once the second bond slot is corrupted, the bond is entirely lost,
Yeah.
erased. The memories vanish. And the gifts of bonds that emerge, they can be arcane powers, maybe tied to rituals, or even specific supernatural creatures from the Veil. It shows their growing, irreversible connection to that darker world.
So even the purest memories, the most heartfelt connections, they become fuel for dark power, tainted, and eventually erased. And it sounds like there are no truly good powers in the system at all, are there? Even with gifts. No silver linings, just shades of black.
That is a crucial, uncompromising point of the game's design. The source material is crystal clear. Gifts always use black D6s. That makes them inherently powerful, yes, but also very dangerous, because using them inevitably leads to more corruption.
Right, the dark success mechanic.
Exactly. And the game explicitly states there are no good powers, white magic, or angelic forces in this world. All supernatural abilities, even ones that might seem miraculously beneficial in the moment, they all originate from beyond the veil, or they're granted by creatures from that dark, deceitful realm.
So no calling on holy power to fight the darkness.
Nope. It reinforces that pervasive, inescapable nature of corruption in Memento Mori. Every single step towards gaining power is a step away from your humanity. There's no clean way out.
Okay, gifts are terrifying enough. But then we also have stigmata, physical manifestations of decay that somehow, paradoxically, also bestow unique powers.
This is a truly striking element, yeah. Stigmata are precisely these deformities that emerge when organs are corrupted.
Yeah.
And this happens specifically when all the assigned slots in a particular organ nerve, cerebrum, heart, or viscera turn black.
All of them. So it's like a complete breakdown of that aspect of the drifter.
Signifies a complete surrender of that part of their being to the corruption, yeah. And it leads to a visible, often grotesque mark or change.
What kinds of impairments are we talking about here?
They can range really widely. Bodily stigmata could be deformities, amputations, facial disfigurement, severe lingering injuries. Mental stigmata might manifest as crippling manias, phobias, obsessions, severe dementia, or extreme fanaticism.
And supernatural ones, too.
Oh yeah, and those are often the most sinister. Things like inhuman plagues festering on their skin, curses of decay, or genuinely monstrous mutations. Think about it. A drifter could develop nyctophobia, this intense, paralyzing fear of darkness. Or their teeth could literally rot and fall out, leaving them with just rotten teeth.
Grim, but the paradox, the thing that makes this so grimly compelling, these horrible impairments also grant powers. How does that macabre exchange even work?
This is where the game's design really embodies its core theme of finding power in decay. You find an opposite, often perverse, positive ability emerging directly from the negative impairment.
Okay, give me an example. That nyctophobia, the fear of the dark.
Right. That drifter who is terrified of darkness, when they choose to withstand the agonizing mental pain of being in the dark, they can suddenly see perfectly without light, even recognize shades and colors in absolute blackness.
Whoa. And the rotten teeth.
The one with rotten teeth gains the horrifying ability to literally break the teeth of their opponent's weapons, clipping sword points, dulling axe blades with just a touch.
That's weirdly cool, but also disgusting. More examples.
Another might develop hypertrichosis, subtle beast-like hair growth all over. Makes their scent unapproachable to normal humans, but grants them an extraordinary sense of smell for tracking. Or a hump might grow on their back, becoming this mighty lever, allowing them to lift impossible weights.
It's like the body twisting itself into a new, monstrous function.
Exactly. The source gives lots of chilling examples. A black tongue that allows conversation with the mentally ill, a rat tail granting affinity with mice and the ability to command them. Early aging that paradoxically lets them make others forget recent events. It's a true statement about finding power within your own monstrous transformation.
So every step deeper into decay comes with this twisted miracle, a grim trade-off that harks them further. How are these stigmata powers actually activated in the game, and what's the cost of using them?
Players can choose to manifest their stigma's power pretty much whenever they want. There's no dice roll involved. The game just says it will happen in game when you declare it.
Okay, seems simple enough, but there has to be a catch.
There is. Activating it always requires describing a dramatic action that brings the deformity itself front and center. You cannot hide it when you use its power. And here's the real catch. The narrator then controls the swift and immediate negative consequences of manifesting that malformation.
Ah, so using the power draws unwanted attention or has a downside.
Always. For example, if the drifter with the black tongue uses it to speak with someone mentally ill, they have to dramatically expose their disfigured tongue. And the narrator might immediately impose a negative social consequence. Maybe bystanders recoil in horror, guards become suspicious, someone calls for the priest.
Got it. And do they have limited uses?
Yes. Stigmata have charges, represented by little circles on the character sheet. When you use the power, you clear out a circle. To recharge the stigma and regain its uses, the drifter has to again manifest their malformation dramatically, inviting those immediate negative consequences from the narrator all over again.
So it's this continuous, painful trade-off. Each use of the power further alienates them, puts their decay on display, and extracts another toll.
A constant, visible reminder of their curse. It's a fantastic thematic tie-in that keeps the horror absolutely central.
Definitely. Okay, so we have these complex characters, steeped in corruption, wielding dangerous gifts and paradoxical stigmata. How does all this actually come together in playing the game?
At its heart, Memento Mori is really about collaborative storytelling. It's this dynamic between the narrator and the players. The narrator isn't just a referee. They're described as the director of the story.
Director? Okay.
They sketch out the adventure. They vividly describe the world, those haunting sights, chilling sounds, putrid smells. They portray the desperate NPCs, the repulsive creatures the drifters encounter. And crucially, in Memento Mori, the narrator never rolls dice.
Never, at all.
Never. Their duty is solely to set the difficulty for the player's actions and then interpret the results of the player's roles, keeping the narrative flowing, maintaining the atmosphere.
That's a big shift from many RPGs. It puts all the dice rolling and the immediate consequences squarely on the players. So what's the player's role in this?
Players embody their drifters, obviously. And the story unfolds primarily through their dialogue with the narrator. They state an action for their drifter. Drifter could be anything from, walking through the mud, I step closer to the roots of the old tree, to something more intense like, I turn to the beggar and whisper, quiet or I'll shut you up for good.
And when do the dice actually come out?
Only for critical or risky situations. Only when the outcome really makes a difference to the story. This keeps the narrative flow really smooth. Dice rolls act as these dramatic punctuation marks, rather than constant interruptions for every little thing.
The game also outlines some good practices for narrators, doesn't it? Emphasizing their role as facilitators of this dark, player-driven story.
It does, yeah. Some really good advice. One core practice is just describe the world. Use those rich sensory details. Make it feel alive, immersive, almost suffocating sometimes.
Right, set the scene.
The narrator should also aim for a flexible adventure. Prepare only a rough outline, but genuinely allow player decisions to shape where the story goes. Never betray that flexibility by forcing them down a pre-planned path. They also need to define difficulty, knowing when a roll is actually necessary, and setting appropriate values for the challenge, from simple tasks up to nearly impossible ones.
I really liked the emphasis on underlining the dramatic fate. That feels absolutely vital for this game's whole tone.
Oh, it's essential. The focus has to always be on the drifter's journey to perdition. Narrators are encouraged to prompt players, what's your character thinking right now? How does that corruption feel? Encourage them to describe the inner thoughts, the regrets, the pain, maybe even the twisted pleasure their choices in corruption bring. It makes it a shared experience of character decay.
What else? Any other key practices?
A few others. Listen to ideas from the players. Their theories, their questions can actually inspire new story elements on the fly. Talk to drifters, not players. Maintain that in-game focus as much as possible. And really interesting one, never say no.
Never say no, even if the player wants to do something completely outlandish or suicidal in this incredibly grim world.
Exactly. The idea is the narrator shouldn't just shut down a risky or foolish proposition outright. Instead, allow it, but make it absolutely crystal clear that terrible consequences could and probably will follow.
So it encourages ingenuity, but with real teeth.
Right. It ties into presenting problems, not solutions. Create challenges without having a pre-planned answer, forcing players to find their own creative, often desperate ways to overcome things. And finally, narrators should mind the rhythm of the game. Be aware of mechanics that might interrupt the flow, like creating a new gift or stigma, and decide with the players when to address those, rather than halting a really dramatic moment. Immersion is key.
That sounds like a really powerful approach to keep players invested, making them face the horrific choices their characters make head on. Okay, let's dig deeper into the core of how those choices play out, the dice mechanics themselves.
Right. At its heart, Memento Mori uses relatively small pools of standard six-sided dice, d6s, to determine outcomes. When a drifter attempts an action where the consequence is uncertain, the player builds a dice pool.
How do they build it?
It's determined by the number of slots, white or black, in the relevant organ they're using for the action, plus all their blood slots. Remember, blood reflects their overall decay.
Right, blood is always included.
Always. And then, additionally, they can choose one other attribute, either their name, one of their virtues, or one of their bonds to add its associated dice to the pool, but only if it's actually relevant to the action they're attempting.
Okay, so it's not just raw stats. It's about picking the most fitting aspect of your drifter for the situation, almost like narrating how your character is tackling the problem through the dice you choose.
Precisely. Once the dice are gathered, white and black, the narrator sets a difficulty. That's just a numeric value representing how challenging the action is. Could be 1 for something simple, up to 5, or even higher for things nearly beyond reach.
And the players roll, looking for successes.
Yep, they roll their pool. They're aiming to score enough successes. On a white die, that's typically a 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And then you have those special outcomes on the black dice. We talked about the dark success on a 6, the dark failure on a 1, adding that layer of complexity and risk.
If their total successes meet or beat the difficulty, they succeed.
Basically, yeah. If their total successes meet or exceed the difficulty number the narrator set, their action goes as planned.
And the interpretation of those outcomes. It sounds very narrative-driven, fitting the game's style.
It really is. If the roll fails, meaning their successes are lower than the difficulty, the narrator describes what happens. And the key is the situation gets worse. Maybe the threat grows, the drifter attracts unwanted attention, the item they needed is lost, or their own physical or mental condition deteriorates further. The narrator paints that picture of failure.
And if they succeed?
If the roll succeeds, the player gets to narrate how their drifter overcomes the challenge. They add their own flair to that grim victory.
Yeah.
But there's also this really impactful third outcome. Succeeded at a cost.
Ah, yes. Success, but.
Success, but. Here, the player still gets to describe their success, but then they discuss the price to be paid with the narrator. It adds this layer of grim consequence even to winning. It ensures almost no success is ever truly clean.
That's a fantastic way to keep the stakes perpetually high. Even when you win, you might lose something. Okay, and then there's the calling on the dream mechanic. That sounds like a real desperation move. Powerful, maybe dangerous.
It truly is. It's a very powerful ability, but you can only activate it once per gaming session. And you do it after you've made a dice roll, regardless of whether you succeeded or failed initially, though it's usually used on a failure.
So you see the result, and if it's bad.
If you're staring at a failing result in a really crucial moment, you can choose to call on the dream. When you do this, all the white d6s in your pool that didn't score a success, they instantly transform into successes.
All of them. That sounds incredibly powerful, almost like guaranteeing success when you need it most. There must be a catch, a big one.
Oh, there's a very significant one. For every single white die you transform this way,
Right.
the drifter suffers 1 point of blood corruption immediately.
Oof.
So while calling on the dream can absolutely overturn a catastrophic failure, push a drifter dramatically towards achieving their ultimate goal, it comes at that steep price. It significantly accelerates their physical and mental decay. It's a desperate, costly gamble that perfectly embodies the drifter's willingness to sacrifice anything, even their remaining shreds of humanity, to achieve that impossible vocation, their dream.
Wow. The mechanics constantly reinforce the theme. Okay, shifting gears slightly, how does combat work? The narrative flow seems to prioritize atmosphere over rigid rules. Does fighting still feel cinematic?
That's a key distinction, yeah. Memento Mori deliberately treats combat scenes just like any other scene. It avoids those rigid turn orders that often break immersion in other games.
No initiative rolls.
Nope. The narrator triggers rolls when enemies act against the drifters, and players trigger rolls by describing their own actions that have uncertain outcomes under the stress of combat. The conversation just flows logically, following the actions in the scene, rather than a strict my turn, your turn sequence.
And players are encouraged to be creative in how they describe their actions, right?
Agreed.
To use their best attributes. It's not just, I swing my sword.
Exactly. Approach takes priority is a core principle here. Players are really encouraged to describe their actions vividly to leverage their drifter's best organ. For instance, instead of just saying, I attack the ghoul, a player might say, okay, I see the ghoul charging. I grab that terrified villager next to me, drag him towards the monster, and just shove him right in front of it as I get close. The ghoul immediately focuses on the easy prey, giving me an opening. I use viscera for my attack.
Wow, okay. Using the villager as bait uses viscera.
Right. That detailed, ruthless description allows the player to use their viscera organ, showcasing their drifter's cold-hearted nature. It makes how they act just as important as what they do. It integrates mechanics and narrative beautifully.
Truly does. What about actually exchanging blows? If I attack, do I just hit or miss?
When a drifter assaults or attacks something, both sides are inherently at risk. The dice roll determines who actually lands the blow. If the drifter attacks and succeeds, they hit. If they fail, well, they might just miss, or they might be subject to a counterattack. Or, as the game suggests, the narrator and players can justify even the strangest exchanges of blows. Meaning a failed ranged attack against, say, a monstrous harpy flying overhead might not result in the harpy swooping down.
Yeah.
Instead, the consequence of failure might be suffering blood corruption because a swarm of smaller, horrible winged things descends on the drifter, drawn by the commotion, causing this physical and mental toll. It keeps things dynamic, unpredictable, constantly tying combat back to that overarching theme of decay and consequence.
And there's a specific way to help allies too. Creating advantage. Sounds like a moment for maybe selfless, but probably dangerous, heroism.
Yes, and it's explicitly labeled a heroic and dangerous action. And interestingly, it doesn't even require a dice roll from the person helping.
No roll?
No roll. A drifter can choose to expose themselves to extreme danger purely to give an ally an edge, like maybe effectively blocking a charging wilderness devil just long enough to make it vulnerable, or throwing a handful of ash into the air to temporarily mess with the Lamia's invisibility.
Yeah.
The player just describes the action and states they're creating an advantage for their companion.
So it's a guaranteed boost for their ally. But what's the cost to the drifter doing the helping? There's always a cost.
There's always a cost. Creating advantage provides a threshold bonus for the ally's next action, making it significantly easier for them to succeed. However, this act of, selfless heroism, the drifter who creates the advantage always suffers 1 point of blood corruption. It represents that personal sacrifice, the commitment, the inherent risk they take to aid their companions in this incredibly dark world. It's another powerful thematic reinforcement. Even acts of courage contribute, in some small way, to their eventual downfall.
This world is clearly crawling with dangers, both human and not so human. What kind of opponents might drifters actually face? How are they represented?
The world is truly filled with both regular unawares and these terrifying creatures from beyond the veil. Unaware opponents might be common folk driven to desperation or malice, a desperate villager, a corrupt city guard, maybe a fallen knight. These usually represent moderate challenges.
More specialized threats.
You could face a skilled assassin, or even someone labeled an alleged witch who, in the setting, might actually possess some mild supernatural gifts from a pack made with a veil creature.
And the actual supernatural threats, those sound much worse.
Oh, those are the truly profound dangers, yeah. You've got things like restless spirits, tormented ghosts that can drift through walls and just sow fear. Plague specters, whose power actually intensifies near diseased people or mass graves.
Oh.
Then there are the incompletes. Those are former drifters who've been fully consumed by corruption, now wielding their own grotesque gifts and stigmata against you. And powerful beasts from beyond the veil, monstrous chimeras driven by purely primal destructive instincts.
Any others?
Oh yeah. Cunning shapeshifters that can mimic people. Insidious little spy imps gathering information. Many, many more horrors. Each has its own set of unsettling traits, unique ways of threatening the drifters. It really emphasizes that every encounter, whether it seems mundane or monstrous at first, can be fraught with grave danger. A constant reminder of that encroaching darkness.
Given this pervasive corruption, the inevitable decay, it really sounds like there's a distinct endgame for a drifter. A true final fate rather than any kind of traditional happy ending.
Indeed. A drifter's journey in Memento Mori is never, ever one of traditional heroic triumph. Their end comes when they are forced to blacken the very last remaining slot in any of their organs, or the last slot tied to their name, their bonds, or their virtues, when that final slot goes dark.
That's it.
That's it. Their transformation reaches its grim peak. Everything that made them human vanishes. And they become, as the game puts it, a foul creature made of pure nightmares, a full member of the hosts from beyond the veil.
And the player is involved in describing this.
Yeah. The narrator and the player collaborate to describe this chilling final transformation, this complete surrender to the dark. It's the ultimate thematic conclusion to their journey into decay.
That is a powerful and unavoidable end. But before that final transformation, there's a climactic sequence called the Ascent. This sounds like their last, desperate push towards achieving their dream.
Exactly. The Ascent is structured as a three-scene climax, specifically designed to describe the dramatic fate of each drifter's personal dream. It's where they make their final, desperate push towards that impossible goal.
How does it work? Players take turns.
Yeah, players take turns narrating a scene focused on their character, showing their determined path towards fulfilling their dream in that final stretch. For these scenes, each player starts with a significant dice pool, 18 dice, representing all their non-blood slots, with the colors reflecting their accumulated corruption. It represents all their remaining power and potential.
18 dice, that's a lot. And how do these final desperate rolls work? Is it just one big roll?
No, it's a series of trials, building tension. For each of the three scenes in their ascent, the player chooses how many dice to roll from their remaining pool. There's a minimum of 4 dice they have to roll per scene.
And difficulty.
The difficulty for these crucial rolls increases with each scene. Scene 1 might be difficulty 4, Scene 2, difficulty 5, and the final scene, difficulty 6. It builds suspense and desperation, and crucially, any dice they choose to roll in a scene are removed from their pool.
Wow, so they have fewer dice for the harder scenes later on.
Exactly. It emphasizes diminishing resources, escalating stakes, a real desperate gamble as they approach their final reckoning.
So what are the outcomes for these ascent scenes? Does failing mean they stop?
No, interestingly, regardless of success or failure on the roll, the drifter continues on their path towards their dream. If they succeed on the roll, the story progresses from an advantageous position. The narration gets colored with this sense of grim, maybe fleeting optimism.
And if they fail the roll?
If they fail, the drifter still overcomes the immediate challenge in the scene, but they begin to see the first signs of decay. Their path becomes darker and harder. And mechanically, a failed roll in an ascent scene immediately increases the difficulty of the next scene by 1.
Making it even harder later. Brutal. Okay, and then comes the last scene. The true culmination. Just 2 possible outcomes. Fulfill the dream or the nightmare.
This is the absolute moment of truth. The player makes their third and final roll with whatever dice they have left in their pool against that highest difficulty. If they succeed, their dream becomes reality. But it's described as epic decadence.
Epic decadence.
Yeah. The player gets to narrate their character's new, often twisted position in the world. They've achieved their impossible goal, but it's inevitably stained by the corruption, by the means they used to get there. A dark victory.
And if they fail this final defining roll?
If they fail, a gate to the nightmare dimension opens. This is catastrophic. It unleashes this huge wave of catastrophe onto the unaware world. It might even allow those powerful veil entities to finally reach their desired land, the nightmare itself. The drifter's dream is lost, shattered forever. And they personally experience the most painful and horrific experience imaginable, as just a glimpse of the nightmare's borders utterly shatters their mind.
A truly horrific end, just utter despair. Wow, what a grim choice. Is there any possibility of avoiding that ultimate transformation into a monster? Or resisting the complete decay of their humanity? There's an epilogue mentioned, right?
Yes. The epilogue is the final phase, happening after the ascent, determining the drifter's ultimate fate. It's about whether they succumb completely to the plague and the corruption, or if some tiny shred of their former self can somehow endure. There are 2 key roles.
Okay, what's the first?
First is a roll for resisting the plague. The player gathers all the d6s, white and black, from their organ slots. The difficulty for this roll is equal to the number of black d6s in that pool, reflecting the hold of their physical decay.
So the more corrupted your organs, the harder it is to survive physically.
Exactly. If they succeed, the drifter somehow wins their fight against the physical plague. They survive, at least for a time. If they fail this roll, it's their inevitable end. They succumb to the disease.
Okay, so physical survival is possible, maybe. But what about preserving their humanity, their soul? That seems like an even tougher fight.
That's the second, and often more challenging role, resisting the darkness. This evaluates how determined the drifter remains, how strong their lingering ties to humanity are. The player gathers all the d6s connected to their bonds and virtue slots.
The things representing hope and skill.
Right. And again, the difficulty is equal to the number of black D6s in this pool, reflecting how much their soul, their connections, their very identity has been corrupted.
Yeah.
If they manage to succeed on this roll,
Yes.
the drifter defeats the corruption's final pull. They preserve what's left of their humanity, albeit probably in a fractured, transformed state. They endure, changed, but still somehow themselves.
And if they fail this one, even for maybe succeeding at their dream or surviving the plague.
If they fail resisting the darkness, their humanity is definitively forfeit. Gone. This leads to that final horrific transformation into a creature from beyond the veil. They could become one of the exiles, monsters lurking in the unaware world. They might join one of the hosts, serving a powerful prince in the Shadow Realm, or they could face the worst possible fate and evolve into an incomplete, a mindless, monstrous shell driven only by base urges.
So even success in the ascent or surviving the plague doesn't guarantee anything. The darkness can still claim them utterly.
One way or another, the journey ends in transformation. Whether it's a decadent, corrupt fulfillment of a dream or a complete descent into monstrosity.
What an intricate and often devastating conclusion. It truly reinforces those grim themes of loss, corruption, and the inescapable nature of destiny in this game. Okay, let's shift focus slightly. How are these dark adventures actually built and orchestrated by the narrator?
Right. At the absolute heart of orchestrating a Memento Mori adventure is something called Session Zero. And the book stresses this isn't just a casual meetup or optional. It's described as a compulsory preparatory game session involving everyone, narrator, and all players.
Compulsory, okay. What's its purpose?
It's got four main goals, really. First, make sure everyone understands the context, the tone, the world they're stepping into. Second, collaboratively create the drifter characters together. Third, define shared elements of the adventure they're about to embark on. And fourth, crucially, it allows the narrator to gather all the specific information they need to build the adventure from the ground up.
So the narrator prepares nothing beforehand.
Nothing significant, no. Session Zero's output directly informs the entire campaign structure. It makes it a truly collaborative genesis for the story.
Ensuring everyone is bought into the grim premise right from the start. What are the key phases of this essential Session Zero?
The first phase is basically introducing the world of the game. The narrator reads or summarizes the key sections from the rulebook, that historical context of Europe at the time of the Black Death, and the nature of Beyond the Veil. Then they discuss Memento Mori's core themes, maybe the game's pillars, those fundamental ideas that define the playstyle.
And it's a discussion.
Yeah, it's designed to be an open discussion. Make sure everyone's expectations align, set the tone, get everyone on the same dark page.
And this is also where safety tools come in. That seems particularly important given the potentially disturbing themes here.
Yes, absolutely vital. Before moving on, the narrator must introduce safety tools like lines and veils.
Lines and veils, how do they work?
Drawing a line means asking everyone to completely exclude a specific sensitive topic from the game. No ifs, ands, or buts. Things like maybe explicit torture or sexual violence if the group agrees. Drawing a veil, on the other hand, means the topic can be part of the story, but it only happens behind the scenes, off-screen, without explicit detail. You can imply dark themes without graphic depiction.
So it empowers players to set boundaries?
Exactly. It helps ensure everyone feels comfortable exploring these horrific themes within agreed-upon limits. Creates a safer space for a dark journey.
Okay, world introduced, safety tools understood. What's next in Session Zero? This binding pact sounds important.
It is. The second phase is the binding pact. This is literally a shared sheet that the entire group fills out together. It defines fundamental information about their specific group of drifters and the context for their adventure. These choices are vital because they directly influence how the drifters are created and what the narrator sets up. It gives the story a truly personal, collaborative feel right from the beginning.
What kind of specific information goes on this binding pact?
Several key things. First, the world. Where exactly does this adventure take place? Plague-ridden villages of northern Italy. Scottish peat bogs, it grounds the setting.
Okay.
Then, group identity. What actually unites these specific drifters? Are they the last survivors of a mercantile expedition? An armed escort that failed? Maybe just escaped gallows dirt who found each other? Defines their starting relationship.
Makes sense.
Then a shared secret. A shady secret from their past that binds them all together. This isn't just backstory fluff. It's designed to be a source of potential conflict and profound unity within the group. An inherent tension baked in.
Ooh, I like that. What else?
Moment event. the actual name of the mysterious supernatural event that the omen foretold, something like the end of days or the weighing of souls, defines their core quest objective.
Got it.
Omen location. Where is this foretold event supposed to happen? An
Right.
abandoned inn, the bottom of a rocky canyon, gives them a destination to strive for. And finally, effigies. 5 key symbolic concepts or images left to the drifters' minds by the omen. Could be things like corpses, rats, emaciated faces, desperate prayers, the death knell of bells. These symbols become recurring motifs woven into the narrative, enriching it with this shared, disturbing imagery.
Wow. So session zero really creates this communal agreement on the world, the characters' messy ties, the central mystery, giving the narrator all the ingredients they need for a truly bespoke, personalized, horrifying descent for this specific group.
Exactly. It's the bedrock the whole adventure is built on.
Okay, so session zero is done. The narrator has this rich foundation. The game mentions adventures are typically short, right? Like 5 to 7 sessions. That feels right for something this intense.
Yeah, and that's quite deliberate. Because of the very nature of the protagonists, the drifters, and their inevitable decay, the game is really best experienced in that focused, intense span. And these adventures, they're never built from scratch. They always emerge directly from the information gathered during that crucial session zero, the initial context, the things connecting the drifters, that mysterious omen, those evocative effigies. It all feeds in.
So what are the core building blocks, the anatomy of a Memento Mori adventure that guide the narrator in putting it all together?
There are 5 key components that form the narrative skeleton. First, as we mentioned, the omen. It's the driving force. This cryptic message or vision that appears right before the adventure kicks off, rekindling the drifters' dreams, pushing them into action. It explicitly indicates the name and location of that supernatural event, and it's strongly tied to the drifters' personal dreams and those effigies they define together. The narrator then weaves this omen into the opening of the first session, immediately setting the stage and the stakes.
So the omen points them in a direction. But what actually sparks the main plot? The central conflict they get tangled up in.
That would be the dispute. The dispute is the inciting incident. It's a central conflict or maybe a pressing necessity that sets the adventure's premises. It's usually born out of some kind of contrast or conflict between individuals or entities. Could be from the unaware world, could be from beyond the veil, often tied to some physical or supernatural limitation or goal.
And the drifters get caught in the middle.
Exactly. They are instrumental to solving the problem of this dispute. Because of their unique abilities traveling between worlds, perceiving the supernatural, they become necessary protagonists, making their involvement both essential and incredibly dangerous.
And a conflict usually means different sides, different agendas. Are there defined factions the drifters will have to deal with?
Yes, factions represent the competing forces involved in the story's events. They don't necessarily have to be directly part of that central dispute, but each faction has its own goals, its own interests that will impact the drifters.
So players have to navigate these relationships.
Constantly, deciding whether to cooperate with a faction, oppose them, maybe play them off against each other, leads to complex moral choices. The narrator is encouraged to limit these to maybe 3 or 4 main factions, plus any minor ones, just to keep the narrative focused and manageable. And each faction should have a quick description, a clear goal, maybe a weak spot, and importantly, a compelling reason to be interested in the drifters.
Okay, omen sets the path, dispute is the core problem, factions are the players on the board. How does the story actually progress through these elements toward the conclusion?
That's where milestones and challenges come in. Milestones are the crucial moments, the major turning points in the story that the narrator establishes beforehand. Think of them like pivotal scenes in movies.
The big reveals, the major confrontation.
It's exactly places where drifters gain significant new revelations about the dispute, or their actions directly steer its evolution. They usually occur at set times or locations within the narrative structure. The narrator plans the total number of sessions, then sets roughly an equal number of milestones, like 6 milestones, for a 6-session adventure to provide a regular rhythm and ensure dramatic progression.
And these milestones guide the plot.
Yeah. The first milestone is typically defined by the omen itself, revealing the initial information about the dispute. Central milestones develop the plot further, revealing more about the dispute and the factions involved. And the final milestone is the adventure's conclusion, the drifters' last chance to resolve the dispute one way or another.
So milestones are the narrative anchors, the big beats. What fills the space between them? What do the players actually do session to session?
Those are the challenges. Challenges are the risky situations located between the milestones. They're the obstacles, the dangers, the trials the drifters need to overcome to reach their next objective, their next milestone. They don't necessarily bring huge revelations about the overarching dispute, but they are the moments where the drifter's path is defined by their actions, their choices, their sacrifices.
What makes up a challenge?
Each challenge has a clear objective what the drifters need to achieve, explicitly or implicitly. And to bring it to life, the narrator prepares lists of potential locations to explore, NPCs to interact with, often ambiguous, well-informed ones, horrors, disturbing details to sprinkle in, and threats, active dangers like monsters or traps with defined difficulty HP. The narrator uses these elements dynamically to shape the challenge based on what the players actually do.
It sounds like a really flexible yet structured way to run things. The narrator sets this rich, terrifying stage, but the players are truly driving the action and ultimately their own grim destinies.
Exactly. The narrator outlines the problems, not the solutions. It forces player ingenuity and makes their desperate choices truly impactful.
Okay, this is fascinating conceptually. To really bring it home, let's walk through a quick example adventure outline. Burning Sky, I think it's called. Just to see how all these pieces, history, veil, drifters, mechanics, can fit together into a chilling story.
Right. Burning Sky kicks off in Ludford, this small village tucked away in Germany's Black Forest. And the immediate hook is that this village has somehow remained untouched by the Black Death raging everywhere else.
That's immediately suspicious in this setting.
Very. But beneath this apparent calm, there's this deep tension. You've got the monks at the old abbey nearby who are dreaming of some kind of savior arriving, and they're clashing with the villagers who believe they're protected by a figure they call the Lady of the Woods.
Two competing belief systems for survival. And the drifters get drawn into this specific mess.
Precisely. The omen they receive is quite specific. Seek the doors to the dream, in the words of the Lady of the Woods. The burning sky awaits you. This cryptic message naturally ignites their personal dreams and pulls them towards Ludford. And crucially, during Session 0, it was established that each drifter has some kind of pre-existing personal connection to this Lady of the Woods figure.
Ah, so it's personal from the start. Maybe one thinks she holds a cure, another thinks she's family.
Exactly. Could be anything tying their dream to her. A drifter healer might see the village's miracle as a sign related to finding a cure. A ruffian might believe the lady is his long-lost mother. It makes them inherently entangled.
So their personal quests are woven into this village mystery. What's the actual core dispute driving Burning Sky? The hidden conflict they'll uncover.
The underlying conflict is much older, much bigger, and far more sinister than just monks versus villagers. A powerful entity from beyond the veil, Prince Mirtseeker, who rules over the lands of decay, has hired a group of potent beings called astral ephemera.
Astral ephemera, okay.
He's hired them to perform a forbidden ritual. The goal: to rip open a massive laceration in the veil itself, allowing his monstrous hosts free reign in the unaware world for a whole day.
That sounds bad. Very bad.
Extremely bad. However, the Lady of the Woods, the hag protecting Ludford, her very presence there is somehow obstructing this ritual. She's a crucial obstacle. And to complicate things even further, Mirtseeker is secretly planning to betray the ephemera. He doesn't want to give them the powerful astral globe artifact he promises payment. He wants to keep it for himself.
Intrigue. Betrayal. Okay, this is getting complicated. So who are the key factions caught in this web that the drifters will have to navigate?
We've got several main players. First, obviously the hag, known to the villagers as the Lady of the Woods. She's protecting Ludford from the plague, but at a steep secret price involving missing children. Her goals are complex: maintain the status quo because she draws power from the village's belief, but also find a way to return to beyond the veil, something normally impossible for hags. She sees the arriving drifters with their unique nature as a potential opportunity.
Okay, the morally ambiguous protector. Then there are the monks, led by Father Harris. They seem like tools.
They pretty much are. They're being influenced by one of the astral ephemera, who sends them these dreams of holy fire and a coming savior. Their goal is simple: kill the hag, whom they see as demonic. They're zealous, willing to mistreat villagers for information, completely blinded by their perceived righteousness.
And the big bad orchestrator, Prince Mirtseeker himself.
Ruler of the lands of decay. His immediate goal is unleashing his terrifying hosts. His deeper, insidious intention is betraying the ephemera to keep the astral globe, consolidating his own dark power.
What about the astral ephemera doing the ritual? They sound powerful too.
They are. This group, beings with names like Dumathar, Yazidanash, Arvithara, Their goal is to open that veil gash for Mirtseeker's hosts, specifically so they can gain the astral globe. But they want it for their own mysterious lady, not for Mirtseeker. Thara is the one operating mainly in the unaware world, trying to eliminate the hag because her presence disrupts their ritual.
So everyone is manipulating everyone else? Lovely. And
Yeah.
the prince's own forces, the prince's hosts.
These are the various horrible creatures loyal to Mirtseeker harpies, lemurs, lemmier, things like that. They're motivated by his promise of passage through the veil into the unaware world. But there's a fascinating splinter faction mentioned. The Broken Wings.
Broken Wings.
These are maimed harpies who now oppose Mirtseeker. They guard a magical artifact called the First Stone, which influences the magic of the floating castle where the ritual is happening. They want revenge against the prince. They offer a potential, though probably very dangerous, alliance for the Drifters.
Okay, a complex web. Let's trace a possible path. Drifters arrive in Ludford, sense the tension, seek the hag. What challenges might they face just getting to her?
Right. The arrival immediately throws them into that palpable village tension. Monks harassing villagers, maybe. As they try to find the hag, they might have to navigate this conflict, perhaps deal with armed men loyal to the monks or discover unsettling hidden altars in the woods. The journey to her actual lair would likely lead them through a forest where the trees twist unnaturally, where their senses are deceived. They might encounter strange animal guardians behaving with unnatural intelligence. Maybe they even glimpse those missing children sneaking away, hinting at the hag's dark secret.
And then the confrontation with the hag. This sounds like a major milestone.
Absolutely. When they finally meet her in her lair, probably grotesque, maybe unsettlingly charming, it's a moment of revelation. She shows this keen, disturbing interest in their corruption, their gifts, seeing them as tools. And the big reveal, the burning sky from the Omen, it's not in the unaware world at all. It's a meteorological phenomenon unique to Beyond the Veil. And the gate to it, it's right there, hidden at the bottom of an underground stream in her lair. And then she offers the grim deal. She'll show them the way to the burning sky if they help her with an ancient ritual she needs to return to Beyond the Veil. This is a stark player choice, a moral dilemma with huge supernatural consequences. But regardless of their immediate decision, the path forward leads them through that gate into Beyond the Veil for the first time, where they see that ominous burning sky for themselves, a terrifying beacon in the darkness.
And once they step through that gate, they're truly in the thick of it, beyond the veil, navigating its twisted landscapes. What might a drifter experience there? How would their corruption play into it?
They'd be immediately plunged into that corrupted reality, maybe navigating a perverted forest with pools of acid, noxious vapors. Just moving through this environment would challenge their physical and mental attributes, forcing roles that might increase their corruption. They might encounter the desperate, shadowy inhabitants of some gloomy village made of hollowed trees, needing to negotiate for information or supplies, potentially drawing danger. Or they could face a monstrous beast like the Hydra mentioned in the example, a truly formidable foe requiring desperate actions.
This is where the mechanics really bite.
Exactly. A drifter might have to create advantage for an ally, taking on more corruption themselves to give their friend a shot. Or maybe they're forced to call on their dream in a moment of utter desperation against the beast, pushing themselves further into decay just to survive an encounter that would be utterly impossible for a normal, unaware person. This is where those grim mechanics, corruption, gifts, stigmata really come to the fore, forcing players to embrace their monstrous transformations to survive.
And eventually, the path leads towards Prince Mirtseeker's domain, presumably that floating castle. How would the game emphasize the Drifter's internal struggles alongside these external threats?
The journey to Mirtseeker's castle itself would be treacherous. Maybe climbing physics-defying cliffs patrolled by his monstrous harpies, perhaps negotiating with those rebellious Broken Wings for passage. Once inside, the castle isn't just a physical dungeon, it becomes a psychological trap. Rooms might literally force drifters into these dreamlike dimensions that transform based on their personal traumas, their deepest fears, maybe even twisting their bonds against them.
So the environment itself attacks their minds.
Precisely. This is where a drifter might be forced to activate a stigma, making their hidden deformity visible, accepting the consequences just to gain a temporary power to overcome an obstacle tied directly to their deepest fear or regret. They might hear ghostly whispers from the castle's former court members, revealing Mirtseeker's past betrayals, his sadism, deepening the horror. It makes the final confrontation not just physical, but profoundly personal. The final ritual at the top of the tower becomes their last chance to unravel the whole conspiracy, A moment where all their accumulated corruption, their desperate powers, will either achieve their impossible dream in some decadent way or condemn them and perhaps the entire unaware world nearby to a truly horrifying fate under that burning sky.
What an absolutely incredible journey we've taken into the world of Memento Mori. Just wow. From the sheer historical despair of the 14th century to the terrifying, transforming powers of the Drifters, we've really explored a narrative that weaves human tragedy with supernatural horror in a way that challenges our ideas of identity, destiny, just profoundly.
It really does. We've seen how corruption can be both this terrible curse and a source of truly extraordinary, if monstrous, power. And how even when facing inevitable doom, that human dream, that core desire, can drive individuals to absolutely unthinkable lengths. I think this exploration really highlights the ingenuity you can find in storytelling and world building in games like this.
Yeah, and how even these dark fictional realities can illuminate some pretty profound truths about choice, about sacrifice, about the enduring human spirit, even when it's grim and decaying.
Absolutely. It's a testament to how games can tackle complex, heavy themes in a deeply personal and unforgettable way.
So, as we leave this shadowed world behind us for now, maybe something to consider. In our own age, an age of information overload where our identities feel like they're constantly being shaped by external forces, what kind of mark, metaphorical or otherwise, are you acquiring? And what impossible dream are you fighting to fulfill before your own journey's end?
That's a heavy thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating exploration. This has been the Uncanny Valley Podcast.
We'll see you next time.